The most dangerous person in House of the Dragon Season 3 isn't Aegon. It isn't Aemond. It isn't Otto Hightower. And it isn't even the army marching toward Tumbleton. The most dangerous person in Westeros right now is Rhaenyra Targaryen herself. And the terrifying part is that the finale doesn't hide this transformation. It puts it directly in front of us. Episode after episode, Rhaenyra has been losing pieces of the woman she used to be, and by the time she stands before the people of King's Landing wearing her crown and speaking about prophecy, she is no longer simply fighting to reclaim the throne her father promised her.
Cannot fulfill this prophecy!
She is becoming obsessed with proving that she deserves it. That distinction matters, because once a ruler starts believing that their right to rule is more important than the people they rule, the war changes completely. Rhaenyra is no longer asking Westeros to accept her, she is beginning to demand it. And that could be exactly what destroys her. Look at what happens when the finale begins. Rhaenyra learns that Aegon is alive, and instead of responding with the cold calculation we would expect from someone who has been preparing for this war, she breaks down. The survival of Aegon changes everything because the easiest version of Rhaenyra's story has now disappeared. If Aegon were dead, she could tell herself that the war was moving toward its inevitable conclusion. But Aegon is alive, wounded, disfigured, and still capable of becoming a symbol for the Green Cause. That means Rhaenyra has a living rival who can continue to challenge her legitimacy, and this is where her behavior starts becoming increasingly desperate. She decides that she will force the High Septon to recognize her. When he refuses, she doesn't walk away. She orders her men to kill him. Think about what that means. Rhaenyra spent years arguing that the throne belonged to her because of her father's decision, and because the realm had wronged her. Yet when the authority of the faith refuses to validate her claim, she answers with violence. The woman who wanted legitimacy now destroys one of the institutions that could have helped legitimize her. And that is the pattern running through the entire finale. Whenever someone refuses to give Rhaenyra what she wants, she increasingly sees them as an obstacle rather than a person. Mysaria is a perfect example. Mysaria has been useful to Rhaenyra. She has provided information, helped manipulate events, and served as one of the Queen's most important sources of intelligence. But the moment Rhaenyra decides Mysaria has become inconvenient, she dismisses her. The problem isn't simply that Rhaenyra makes a bad political decision by allowing her former spymaster to leave. The deeper problem is that she has stopped thinking about loyalty as something that has to be cultivated. She believes people should remain loyal because she is the rightful queen. But that isn't how power works in Westeros. A crown does not automatically create loyalty. Fear can create obedience. Blood can create allegiance. Money can buy soldiers, but loyalty has to be maintained. And Rhaenyra is beginning to burn through hers. Baela sees it before almost anyone else does. She understands that Rhaenyra is turning people into tools. Daemon is useful because he has Caraxes and an army. Corlys is useful because he controls ships and commands respect. The Dragon Riders are useful because dragons are weapons. Even Baela herself becomes useful because she represents the future of the Black Dynasty. But when Baela challenges Rhaenyra, Rhaenyra doesn't respond like a mother figure, or even like someone trying to persuade a loyal subject. She confines her. That's important. She's one of Rhaenyra's own people. And yet the Queen is increasingly treating disagreement as betrayal. That brings us to Helaena, because this may be the most disturbing scene in the entire episode. Rhaenyra knows Helaena is refusing to eat. She tries to reason with her, but Helaena isn't interested in politics anymore. She tells Rhaenyra that she hates the place, that everything is ugly, and then she tells Rhaenyra that she is ugly. And Rhaenyra loses control. Instead of recognizing that Helaena is traumatized, instead of recognizing that this woman has already lost her child and is being crushed under the weight of a war she never wanted, Rhaenyra orders her guards to force-feed her. This is where the title of our theory becomes impossible to ignore. Rhaenyra's biggest enemy is Rhaenyra, because Helaena isn't threatening her throne. Helaena isn't leading an army. Helaena isn't plotting a coup. She is simply refusing to participate in Rhaenyra's vision of the future, and Rhaenyra cannot tolerate that anymore. The Queen has become so consumed by the war that even someone else's pain becomes an inconvenience. And then Helaena dies. She throws herself from the window, and the reaction from Rhaenyra is almost more disturbing than the death itself. There is no huge emotional breakdown, no immediate collapse. Instead, Rhaenyra approaches the window and looks at the tapestry Helaena had been creating. And what does that tapestry show? Helaena falling. Rhaenyra sitting on the Iron Throne, fire and blood surrounding her. That image could be one of the most important pieces of the entire season. Because what if Helena wasn't simply predicting her own death? What if she were showing Rhaenyra the price of the throne? Rhaenyra spends this episode obsessed with proving that she is the rightful queen, while Helena's visions repeatedly suggest that the throne itself is connected to destruction. And the cruel irony is that Rhaenyra may finally be becoming the person the prophecy warned everyone about. She believes she is protecting the realm from a future darkness, but in the process she is creating darkness around herself. That's why her speech to the people of King's Landing is so important. Instead of talking about bread, safety, taxes, or the war, Rhaenyra talks about prophecy. She tells the crowd about the ancient responsibility carried by her bloodline. She speaks about the coming darkness and declares herself the prince that was promised. But look at the reaction of the people around her. They don't look inspired. They look confused. Because Rhaenyra is speaking about a future that nobody else can see while the people standing in front of her are worried about the present. That's the political mistake. She believes the people should support her because she has been chosen by history. But the people don't live inside history. They live inside King's Landing. They care about whether their children are fed. They care whether their homes are safe. They care whether dragons are going to burn their city. And Rhaenyra is giving them prophecy instead of security. This is exactly where the show is setting up a much darker downfall for her. The Greens don't necessarily have to defeat Rhaenyra directly. Rhaenyra can defeat herself. Every time she removes an advisor, alienates an ally, imprisons someone who questions her, or chooses violence over compromise, she makes her own position weaker. And the more isolated she becomes, the more she will believe that everyone around her is betraying her. That creates a vicious cycle. She becomes paranoid because people are leaving. People leave because she becomes paranoid. She responds by becoming more ruthless. And her ruthlessness creates even more enemies. That's how civil wars become unstoppable. And then we reach Tumbleton. At first glance, the battle seems like another massive clash between black and green forces. But underneath the Dragonfire, something much more important is happening. The loyalty of the Dragon Riders is collapsing. Ulf is supposed to be an asset. Instead, he becomes a weapon nobody can control. Ormond believes he can manipulate Ulf because Ulf is beneath him socially, but that arrogance becomes his downfall. Ulf eventually turns Silverwing against the very people he was supposed to help, and Tumbleton burns. The message is obvious. Dragons don't care about political loyalty. And neither do the men riding them if they stop believing in the cause. That's why Rhaenyra's treatment of people becomes so dangerous. Her entire claim depends on others accepting her authority. But the war has created a world where everyone is calculating what they can gain from their alliance. If Rhaenyra becomes too demanding, the people around her will eventually start asking a very simple question. Why should we die for her? And that question is already beginning to appear. Even Hugh is pulled away from the battlefield because his personal life matters more to him than Rhaenyra's orders. His wife is dead, and suddenly the political war becomes personal. That's another theme the finale keeps returning to. The rulers think they are moving pieces across a board, but every piece is a human being with someone they love. Rhaenyra is forgetting that. Aegon, strangely enough, is beginning to remember it. That is why the reunion between Aegon and Aemond matters so much. Aegon arrives at Harrenhal broken. He is no longer the arrogant king we saw earlier in the story. He has been burned, crippled, humiliated, and nearly killed. Aemond, meanwhile, has finally begun to understand the consequences of what he did. Their relationship has been poisoned by jealousy and resentment, but now something changes. They reunite, and for the first time, the two brothers may actually have a common purpose. That could be extremely dangerous for Rhaenyra, because Rhaenyra's enemies have been divided by their own ambitions. Aegon and Aemond have spent much of the war working against each other. But if they can put that hatred aside, even temporarily, the green side suddenly has something it has been missing: unity. Meanwhile, Rhaenyra's side is becoming more fractured. Mysaria is gone, Baela is angry, Helena is dead, the Dragon Riders are becoming unpredictable. Daemon remains obsessed with solving problems through force. Corlys is increasingly interested in peace, and Rhaenyra herself is becoming more authoritarian. That contrast is the real ending of Season 3. The Greens are damaged, but the Blacks are divided. And that means Rhaenyra doesn't necessarily need a stronger enemy. She simply needs to continue making the same mistakes. There is another clue hiding in the way the episode frames Rhaenyra's relationship with the prophecy. The more desperate she becomes, the more she relies on the idea that she has a sacred purpose. This gives her a psychological escape from responsibility. If she believes that destiny requires her to sit the Iron Throne, then every terrible decision becomes justified because the greater mission supposedly demands it. That's dangerous, because once someone believes they are destined to rule, they stop asking whether they should. And that's exactly what Rhaenyra is doing. She isn't asking what will happen to the people if I continue this war. She's asking what must I do to win. Those are two completely different questions. And the second question is how kingdoms burn. The most tragic part is that Rhaenyra may still believe she is the hero of this story. She believes she is protecting her father's legacy. She believes she is defending her children. She believes she is preventing a greater evil. She believes the prophecy gives her purpose. But Westeros doesn't care what she believes. History will judge what she does. And if Season 3 is any indication, Rhaenyra is heading toward the exact kind of transformation that makes a tragic ruler so compelling. She started this story fighting because she believed the throne was hers. She may eventually become someone willing to destroy everything around her simply because she cannot accept losing it. That's why Helena's tapestry is so important. Rhaenyra sees herself sitting on the Iron Throne surrounded by fire and blood, and instead of walking away from the throne, she keeps moving toward it. Maybe that's the real prophecy. Maybe the tragedy was never about whether Rhaenyra would become queen. Maybe the tragedy is that she will become queen, and by the time she finally gets what she wants, there may be almost nothing left for her to rule. So when Season 4 begins, don't just watch Aegon and Aemond. Watch Rhaenyra. Watch who she trusts. Watch who she pushes away. Watch what happens when someone tells her no, because the next stage of this war may not be about whether the Greens can defeat Rhaenyra. It may be about whether Rhaenyra can defeat the woman she is becoming. And if she can't, then the Iron Throne won't need to destroy her. She'll destroy herself. And that is what makes Rhaenyra's future so terrifying.